Greetings, friends. You'll have to excuse the background noise. It's traffic, but otherwise I'm in a nice location down by the lake. But I guess a few things have been on my mind. Free speech is something that a lot of people talk about. You just keep hearing about free speech, free speech, free speech this, free speech that, blah blah, free speech. Some people just don't care about certain topics, so they don't want to talk about them. And the other thing is people get censored, all the censorship on YouTube, on Facebook, on Twitter, in the general print media, and in entertainment and in culture in general, the universities, the media companies, and science as the institutional force that it is. I mean, not science itself, but the scientism and its proponents. They're all indoctrinating us constantly. So, but like free speech is just something that's been drilled into us again and again, and I'm just tired of it. I'm just tired of it because it's not going anywhere, and like my channel hasn't grown in over a year, and I there's no point in getting too angry about it, because at some point my subscribers just stopped growing. It was growing by hundreds and hundreds per month for over a year. Every month it would grow 200 or 300 subscribers at least, and I was putting out different content. I don't specialize because this channel is just for fun. I'm just having fun here, so don't take this too seriously. So, but yeah, I mean, at some point, like about a year ago or maybe 11 months ago, and it happened to my channel. Probably happened to many channels. I know it happened to Steve Franson. He was saying that about his channel, somewhere around there. They just sort of put the clamps on it, so I guess the algorithm doesn't favor you anymore, or I don't know how they make their decisions, but they have people that look at your video and or look at all your selection of videos, or they see a particular video, who knows, and they put you on the bad boy list. So I don't know, it's funny, but I don't, obviously free speech is important to me, but at the same time it's not important to me. It's like this weird tension where it's like, yeah, I mean, obviously partly that describes what I like to do. Freely speak things that are on my mind. But then the other half is like, well, I mean, it really depends on what people want to talk about it. That has to be the base thing that changes. The consciousness has to change to some degree, and so there's no answer for the moral questions, the deep spiritual searching. That's why surface philosophy, materialistic philosophy, just capitalism, and you don't have anything else other than capitalism or socialism. That's all you have. You don't have any religion. You don't have any spirituality, which I don't think are separate things. I think that's a silly thing to say they're separate. If you're a really spiritual person, to some extent you're going to have to be religious, even if you do your own thing all the time. There are going to be certain principles, a certain system of behavior, or which you invest your time and meaning in, and that's a real thing in the world. The world is not material. It's not just these objects. It's not these isolated things. It's much more connected. Subscribe to me on BitChute. If you don't, I'm on BitChute. I'll provide a link in the description. So come December 10th, whatever happens, probably nothing will happen to my channel because it's too small and insignificant, but it may happen to other content creators. No one really knows, but come that date, YouTube will be using they're just sending out threats, so who knows, but they're saying after that date we're going to decide whatever is commercially viable, and if you're not commercially viable, your content could be taken down by YouTube based on YouTube's discretion. And they don't describe exactly what they mean by commercially viable, but that means, to me, commercially viable. Otherwise, I mean, it means obviously that you can make money for them, or there's some reason which they decide which is good for them or society that you should exist, and they don't want you to exist if they don't like you, so then they can just get rid of you. So that could be the end, but who knows. BitChute, the funny thing is, like, BitChute sucks. So if it's like, if your channel gets deleted off of YouTube, and then you end up on BitChute, it's like, that sucks for you, man. So that may be my fate. But whatever. I'm still going to keep creating content. The content's always going to be coming from time to time. Another reason why you can't get too tied up with the whole free speech is, like, obviously some things need to be censored. So, I mean, there's sick stuff going on in the world. Everyone can admit that there's stuff you wouldn't want children seeing, or even certain adults. And then you got to say, what don't you censor? And so that's why everyone has to be religious. They have to adopt some worldview, because that allows you to say, okay, at some point we can't admit this into our culture. Like, this behavior here, we're not going to do that. We're not going to do the whole polygamy thing, or we're not going to do the whole older men taking younger boys on as private disciples, and just kind of having a lot of private time and then abusing them. And it's like no, it's like, that's not going to happen. In a certain culture, it's like that's their morality, and it's not good. It's bad in the eyes of God, but for them, they don't see it that way, which is too bad. But so some cultures are going to do more bad things than other cultures. That's just the truth. In our imagination, like, if the atheist is just going to disappear, and that's what he's expecting, or the new agey guy is like, I'm going to transcend, or my light body will be floating through space, and I'll communicate again with the machine elves, or something like that. I'll communicate with my spirit eagle in the sky. We'll commune and smoke the peace pipe with my ancestors. I will go, or something. I will go to Valhalla, or the Christian worldview that you go to heaven, or maybe you'll go to purgatory, or maybe you'll go to hell. But then, even if you're in heaven, then you may be not in heaven right away, because you might have to be resurrected at the return of Jesus. So that's one thing I need to do more reading on. But what exactly do they mean by that? But whatever happens to you, what I'm saying is, we can't all be right. One of us has to be right. One of us has to be right. So if the atheist is wrong, then he's in a worse position, because if he finds out, oh shit, actually my body wasn't everything, and I'm assuming atheists who believe in, you die, that's it, which are most atheists, maybe not all, but so some atheists, they take a weird spiritual view, which I find very strange. Generally, these people tend to be materialists. But let's say, if they're wrong on that, then they're in a bit of a fix, because now you may be all right if you lived by a way that God would approve of, but it's certainly going to be better for you if you were instructed with the teachings of the early church, and obviously the scriptures, but the teachings of the church fathers and saints and other good men, like, and just a general, like, historical knowledge. Obviously that's not for everyone, but at least the basic instruction in that, and then maybe that's going to be a good education of its own, regardless of whether you in your own way can argue for and against that. It's a system of thought. It is a philosophy. I mean, the thing is, if we're wrong, then okay, we disappear and there's nothing. So then the Christians didn't lose anything, or other people who believe in something after death. You didn't lose anything. Oh, you were wrong during life, but you still live by a good moral code that you can see in the world, produces a good situation with civilization doing well, generally speaking. And then if the New Age people or the Hindus, if they think, they might be wrong too, and even they might be better off than the atheists, but they could still be wrong, because then they could still be caught in a demonic situation where you worshipped all these gods, and then these gods pulled you in after you died, because you lived by a confused moral code, because your world is polytheistic, which even though you argue, oh, there's Brahma and he's one, but then he separates. Hindu philosophy is very captivating and very persuasive to many people, including me when I was younger. So I'm not trying to say it's not intellectually sophisticated, but because they don't stress a monotheistic worldview, that's why it's so chaotic. This is all wonderful, and like the left may like to embrace all these people and just, it's all great. We can all be deists, and all the religions are coming to one truth. All the worldviews are participating in getting us back to God, which is really inside of you. God is you and I, and we're coming, and it's like, actually it's like, okay, still, if the Christian's right, he could be wrong too in that case. Then maybe I think the Christians are correct. I just think that's a safer bet, but it's also more intellectually convincing. You're not going to get caught up in any of these distractions, and like, you're not going to believe that nature, like Mother Nature, is a thing, or maybe it's a demonic force, the planet and all that stuff, but Mother Nature is a real demonic force that drags down civilizations from time to time, and they all become pagans, and they put on white robes, they dance around and hold hands, and then they do some really weird rituals, sometimes involving human sacrifice occasionally, but they do have to have some bloodletting, and they just do things that to us would be like, well, you guys are like kind of nymph-like, but also gremlin-like at the same time. It's like you have a nymph-like, elf-like exterior, very shiny and kind of beautiful, but then underneath it's like, oh, they're actually demonic, hippie, new age, frolicking in a meadow at the Midsummer's Eve, that kind of pagan thing. And then they have like the animal horns, the skull, and all that stuff. Yeah, man, Mother Nature is not something you want to worship. That's the goddess worship. They would have a temple devoted as a brothel. That was standard practice in much of these ancient civilizations that worship the Mother Goddess. Far less sense of individual rights as came after the Christian world. The Christian world actually introduced like the concept of more individual rights. I'm not trying to be a big person on rights, and because rights can be a very difficult concept that can be used to destroy cultures. But if you want to make the argument that, oh, Christianity was so terrible, it didn't allow for any freedom, women were subjugated to their husbands, it's like, well, you have to understand most of human nature is pretty bad, and humans are fallen. That's the main thing. It's like the Hindu view that we're going around in cycles, like the Asian capitalists, which is a YouTube channel. The one guy, he was saying recently how his worldview had developed into like traditionalism and reactionary traditionalism, more or less, is what he was saying, which is sensible. But then he was taking a very kind of like cosmopolitan sort of, or more of a Hindu look, which obviously I'm skeptical of that. But it's like, maybe he could be right, but he's saying like, because he's buying into these the Kali Yuga, the Yuga cycles of thousands of years, which I talked about over a year ago, when I was more convinced, like I was more intrigued by that and thought it could be real. I was still more interested in Gnosticism, and since that time I've realized all that stuff is wrong. I renounce all of that. I recant all Gnostic views. I believe in God, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost. And that's good enough for me. But then with these Hindu things, it's like, well, we need a new religion. It's like, maybe we need a new religion. We need a new religion for Western society. And he's right. But it's like, he's not actually interested in God. And that's one thing I find fascinating. A civilization can go on, and true, maybe not everyone's going to actually believe in God. You got a critical number that actually believe, and then that's good enough to carry along the flock, so to speak. But then, are they all the flock? Are they all actually fulfilling God's will, or or doing good in the world in God's eyes, that they will be saved. And you can't say that about everyone, because only God can judge. Only God can judge me. Only God can judge you. So anyways, it's the main thing about reactionary thought. It's order. We want order. Everything has its proper place. We believe in hierarchy. That's all well and good, but you need a creator to have creation. You need a supreme being to have an arranged, elegant, beautiful, flourishing world. Like you would need that for a garden. A garden is not something that just grows in the wild. A garden is something that requires a gardener. So good and bad require a source, something from which to judge them, to be good or bad. Otherwise, it's all just relativism. That's all it is. Hasta luego, amigos.